Speaker.
I call Fletcher Tabato.
Yes, it will be good. Thank you, Mr Cosgrove. Look, I just have to give full credit to Minister Joyce for his contribution in the House this afternoon. He was magical in his presentation. He managed to make 10 minutes feel like an hour. It was incredible. And then what he also did, with the full support of the member Melissa Lee, was talk about, and I'm trying to quote here, you'll forgive me if I'm slightly wrong, but how legislation like this, sir, touches the lives of many New Zealanders. It underpins a highly functioning society. Look, wouldn't it be nice if the Minister could have just come out and said, look, we got it wrong, we made quite a few mistakes, and we need to fix it up. It would have been very refreshing indeed. But I do have to make a point on behalf of New Zealand First, sir. I'm speaking to this today, but this piece of legislation was not on the order paper on Thursday. That's right. So we're here, and the Minister himself spoke quite effusively about the raft, the sheer volume of minor changes included in this legislation. Now, in terms of order of the House and procedures of Parliament, we in New Zealand First get spoken to about not contributing to the functions of. But this is almost mischievous in nature when a government hands over legislation of this volume and this magnitude, claiming that they're minor changes the day before we're obliged to read it, and as the opposition try and find the errors and the mistakes in this. This in itself will create and give rise to more errors and subsequent changes to legislation by the very nature of the way it was brought to the House, sir. It is unfortunate, and I would suggest it is unacceptable. I'd also like to point out that I know much of the fix-ups have arisen because of the Productivity Commission report in 2014. But even in that context, it's taken a very long time to get to this point in the House, Mr Speaker. There is a lot of work that has needed to be done arising from that, but it's just taken too much time, and I put it to the House, is it not too much to ask the Minister to be a little bit more rapid in their response to known issues? And I use only two examples to highlight my concern. Several members have spoken about the Unit Titles Act 2010. Now, I personally wasn't in the House in 2010, but even then, when the legislation was passed, industry spoke about having concerns with the legislation and not being fit for purpose. So, what is it, 6 years later, here we are, with a government that proposes to be the advocates of business. The other one that came to mind was the Parental Leave and Employment Protection Act 1987, Mr Speaker. Today the House seeks to amend Section 71K, which unfortunately creates unintended consequences for primary carers of preterm babies. Now, after all this time, and so it's just a couple of examples that highlights my concerns. Now, because of the nature of the way that the bill was brought to the House, I would like to take the opportunity to address the member with several questions that have come to me through reading the legislation as quickly as I possibly can. So what I would like, sir, is to ask about Part 1, Clause 5, which repeals Section 104, which currently requires certain information about loans or other investments or certain offices or companies to be included in a building society annual return. Why are we taking that away? And that's a genuine question, Mr Speaker. It just struck me as what is the problem that the government presumes to be solving with repealing that particular provision within that piece of legislation. Another one that is of great concern, Clause 19 amends Section 202, which currently provides that group financial statements are not required if the company is a subsidiary of a New Zealand company, and financial statements for the group of that New Zealand company are prepared. The amendment extends the provision to cover situations in which the company is a subsidiary of an overseas company. What's so bad about asking a New Zealand subsidiary of an overseas company to prepare financial statements here in New Zealand? What problem are you trying to solve? So there is a very large concern about that one, Mr. Speaker. And it is genuine questions, and I acknowledge that they could be raised in the Select Committee, but I raise it with the Speaker yet again that this has been brought to us quite precipitously, and it may be of benefit to the government and its staff to be aware of the nature of the questions that we will be bringing to the Select Committee process, which also highlights another concern I have. The Minister stood up and told us how much of this is small and minor changes. Let's bring it together in one omnibus bill, and yet we're taking it to 3 Select Committees. You know, let's get some consistency here. That doesn't make sense to me. You got bringing it together as an omnibus bill, but then you're sending it to 3 very distinct Select Committees. Because why? Because they're probably important and need to be considered by those Select Committees who have the expertise and the knowledge in that area. So the inconsistencies are again of concern. So I probably won't take more time of the House, and I will end with this question here. Clause 24 amends section 208, which imposes an obligation to prepare an annual report. The amendment provides that the requirement does not apply to a large company if it is not required by a percentage of the financial shareholders. Now, I know of particular instances where a certain group of shareholders dominate the ownership of a company, and because of the nature of their stake in that business, as is the nature of the shareholdings. But to then say, because the majority of those shareholders don't want that report, does not seem to fit with a democracy and a clear and transparent operations of a business in this country. So, genuine questions, sir. Again, we have concerns about the process and about the speed with which it has come to the House, which undermines our ability to act in good faith as an opposition party. However, we do support it to Select Committee because at this stage we believe the Minister in his missive that these are minor changes, and we will support that through the Select Committee process at this stage. So thank you for your forbearance, Mr. Speaker.